So welcome to our last session on idea of the university in the history of our culture and civilization. I always try to review the most important points, and so I will do it for the last time again. So we are coming in the Western world from three traditions, which I summarize calling it Jewish or Semitic tradition, which gave us religious explanation of the universe. Orientation for man, how to live with God, one God. Because before there were polytheistic and animistic religions. Semitic tradition gave us a monotheistic relationship of man with one God. Great monuments of these traditions are the Old Testament, the New Testament, and Quran. They are kind of three versions of interpretation of the same theme. There is not a great difference, you know. It is a relationship with God. They elaborate in detail what it means for man and human society to live in God-ordered universe. Second tradition was Greek tradition, which started with a polytheistic explanation of the universe. Their gods were placed on hills, and they were more or less very similar to human beings. The only difference was that they were immortal, but they behaved just like human beings, you know. They were able to cheat, to kill, you know, but the only special thing was they were immortal. So it was kind of hilarious, you know, religion. It was produced by Greek mind. And they had also a man who explained it. It was Xenophanes who explained that all religions are anthropomorphic and hypostatized. Anthropomorphic, man-made, hypostatized, thrown there, and you find it there. So it is a brilliant Greek mind which created the first philosophy of religion in Greek tradition. This would have been forbidden in Semitic tradition. This was no-no. So Greeks had, in 6th century BC, this view about the nature of the universe. They glorified man. Man is the center of the universe. And men came to ask basic questions. Where from? The universe and myself. Where to? What to do in between? What am I between where from and where to? It was a challenge for Greek mind to explain what is the position of man in this universe. They collected all information sensorially at the beginning, but they discovered that they have criticism of senses. The senses can betray the man. So they stopped trusting senses and checked with their reason the material delivered into the mind by the way of senses. It was a great event when Thales, father of Greek philosophy, observed a boat at a distance from Asia Minor And he saw just the mast, the top of the mast. What the sense tells you, what is the top of the mast? The ship will be growing bigger and bigger, it comes closer to me. And then something tells me, no, the ship remains the same. But how come I see the top? And his reason tells him, it looks like we live surrounded by a huge lake. But my reason tells me the lake slopes. And it is his reason which tells him, when I go where I see the boat now, and if I observe another boat, I will see a mast, top of the mast. His reason tells him, against all of our sensory information, we live on a ball. So this is a great triumph of reason. 6th century BC, 6th century AD, 16th century AD, we burned people to death for their claim that we are the belly button of the universe. We are the center of the universe. And everything turns around us. And we are a plate, on a plate, Official papacy cannot accept heliocentric view of the universe. And people who will be teaching this heliocentric will pay with their lives. So out of Greek tradition came all these marvels of triumphs of human reason, science, philosophy, art, theater, literature, history. This is what we call culture. An orientation of man within this cultural view was the outlook of educated Greeks. They gave us political system, in hoping that this political system can establish ideal organization of the society, but it never worked in ancient Greece. One form of government followed another form of government. They gave us democracy, but their democracy was rather weak. It was plutocracy, because it could never maintain itself. It was overthrown by tyranny, by monarchy. Nothing lasted long. Greeks themselves eliminated from democracy women and slaves. We have taken the idea of democracy from Greeks. The Greek concept of the democracy was improved by British, by British empirical experience. When it came to the United States, it came from these British sources. So it was empirical, but there was not very much new. The problem was that we took over the document of democracy, and we were not sure if we should not invite some of the European monarchs to run our show. We were not very sure, because we were not experienced with democracy. It was always, the Greek system was philosophically supported by Plato, who gave us a theory of human nature that we are not equal. It is this pyramid-like model for society. And within this pyramid-like society, you know, we progress by elimination. We don't carry everybody up. You know, in our American tradition, there was a dream that we can have a cube. We can pull everybody, you know, up. So Plato gave us this pyramid-like tradition. This is what Europe accepted during their whole history. Their educational system is Plato's orientation. So by elimination, not everybody has to be pulled to the peak. But we need people who are very good electricians, people who are plumbers. Not everybody should go to college. This is not Plato's system. Plato's system is aristocratic system of education. So Greeks gave us thinking mind, games the mind can play, and fascination, you know, with human discovery. The third tradition was Roman tradition. Romans were completely different. They did not believe in human mind and creativity of human mind. They were fascinated with power. The whole Roman history is based on it. Imperial Rome is the last stage of Rome. Also, inability of Romans to anticipate future, what was going to happen. During the Imperial Rome, they believe it will be always the same. They will be running the world, expanding and expanding, building super balls all around the Mediterranean Sea. The emperors fiddled when the Rome was burning. They did not think that it could end one day. They kept destroying themselves. They did not see it. I call it Carnevale had to go on, you know, until 3rd century AD when everything collapsed. The emperor escapes Rome and builds another Rome, second Rome. This was the end of Rome. The second Rome was a new aspiration, how to preserve the Rome. After all adventures of second Rome in Constantinople, it was occupied by Turks in 1553. This is the end of second Rome. And now we are at the beginning of the third Rome, which is Moscow. Those who escaped from second Rome went theologians of Orthodox Church went to Moscow, thus creating the third Rome, and as the Russians believe, the last one, and the true one, of course. The artists and men of letters escaped 1,000 miles to Italy. They settled down in Florence and established Plato's Academy in Florence. So this is the continuation of Greek tradition brought to Florence, and this is the beginning of Renaissance. I mentioned that the true beginning of Renaissance is invitation of Alcuin to come and to reintroduce trivium and quadrivium into the empire of Charlemagne. This is 8th century AD. 7th century later, it is a direct continuation of Alcuin's beginnings, beginning of ancient Greek learning, trivium, quadrivium. Within 200 years, trivium and quadrivium is transferred into 4 faculties. You see, this is the Greek way of thinking globally. And within this global framework, you fit every detail to be part of a larger framework. So there will be 4 faculties now. Trivium, quadrivium will be part of philosophy faculty. Next to philosophy faculty will be faculty of law. Third will be faculty of medicine. And the 4th, faculty of theology. This is the core of continental learning, designed platonically. The largest possible framework. When you study at this institution of higher learning, you can study only in one faculty. With permission of the dean, you can study in another faculty, but it is expected you will study only in one faculty. After I escaped to Austria, I wanted to study everything. So I studied philosophy, and with permission of a dean of theology who had an assistant, a mathematician and physicist who turned Jesuit. I was permitted to sit on his classes on Wittgenstein in theology faculty. With permission of another friend, I was able to smuggle into law and selected, raisins, only in what I was interested in, and not to miss the rest. I didn't know what I will do one day in life. I heard that medicine is the surest thing, and that people get sick everywhere, but I could not carry everything, So I was taking courses in faculty of medicine, but I was not sure what I was going to do, like young people don't know. I wanted to play soccer too. And I could make money with soccer. But I decided in last moment, no, I'm getting older. My knees are not as good, So just go and study one of these fields. So this is continental education, which is the largest possible concept of human mind about not only nature of the earth, human history, but about nature of the universe. Within this, you find your orientation, So you see, this is non-empirical. All empirical details are subsets of this large concept of human mind. The goal is world view, to collect information from all the fields you study, fusing them together and have your own world view. Germans call it die Weltanschauung. So the purpose of educated man is to have a world view. And this world view is man-created, not given from above. When we come into our more modern history, we see that education in this very form was changing according to changes of the society. It became apparent that continental education can be continued only on the continent, with a split within the realm of religion between Catholicism and Protestantism. All of these faculties of theology will be Roman Catholic in Roman Catholic countries, Protestant in Protestant countries. So the whole north of Europe have theology faculty, but they will be teaching Protestant theology. So you see, the structure does not change. And basically, it is based on Plato's philosophy. Later, slightly changed by Plato's pupil Aristotle. It becomes so-called realistic. Different things are happening in England, where, again, British society was always different society in terms of tradition, in terms of thinking, in terms of their basic philosophical beliefs. They were, we call them, empiricists. They trusted senses. Their best people during the history of modern England, between 11th century AD up to 18th century, 19th century, all of them have philosophical outlook which we call empirical, trust in senses. John Locke, as I said, if you remember, became the Pope of empiricism. And he formulated it so beautifully. There is nothing in human intellect what has not been prior in senses. This is philosophical belief of British people until probably 20th century, but more or less still a common man believes in that. In the 18th century, it was German philosopher Leibniz who corrected it with gracious permission. He asked, if I may amend, Mr. Locke, what you say, how true you are, but may I amend you? There is nothing in human intellect what has not been prior in senses, my amendment, with the exception of intellect. This was the change, radical change. It took a long time before British tradition produced a man who criticized way of British thinking. It was David Hume. Whoever dares to do something like this will pay a very high price for it. David Hume never was able to get a job in Scotland, in England. One of the most talented men was never able to make it. He summarized his finding, everything can be otherwise. Future doesn't have to resemble our experience of our senses, that things will be so. And I can tell you, the sun does not have to rise tomorrow. They thought he lost his head. You know. The sun has to rise tomorrow. It has risen before, it has to rise. He said, no, it doesn't have to rise. Here was the core. Completely different thinking. He lived 1711 until 1776. Then, with his criticism of empiricism, he touched very deeply great German thinker Immanuel Kant. So there is a direct connection between British and German way of thinking. Both of them have to cooperate. Our senses and reason are in one head, you know, and they cooperate. It seems to be self-evident, you know, but it was so difficult to accept this very view. If you accept that, you know, and if you design educational system, you are educating people in this fusion of senses and intellect and whatever senses and intellect can gather. This is the modern way. Fusion of these two. Still, the continental emphasis was on reason. You know, they were just like British. They say, "Oh yes, of course it is so," but British said, "But what is not sense is nonsense." Do you agree? And Europeans on the same time, but you know, among all these things, who is riding the horse is the reason, you know. So there is a deep disagreement, you know, between these two ways of thinking. In everything. It is based on philosophical belief which is expressed through educational system. So ideally, you cannot separate them. So how far the differences go? When we are born on the continent, you get education and you have nothing to say. They give you that what they believe in. When you are born in the United States, you get education as it is common here. There is a difference between education and training. We train people. Ad hoc, we train them. Europe tries to educate and give the largest possible education only to small part of their population. At the bottom of the pyramid, people are educated in a sense that they know that they are Germans, they know German history, they know European history, geography, world geography. They don't get lost, you know, in the world. This is the basic. Everybody has to have it. But the man in the street doesn't know, you know, who was Dürer, who was Newton. They know he was a great scientist, but no understanding what he did, you know. This is not of his interest. On the other hand, you know, we train people, well trained in that or that. And our society is based on people who have to be retrained. Do you hear it now? We have to retrain our workers, you know, they cannot compete in the world. So we have to retrain them, again, retrain them. I think we missed the boat. And about 40 years ago, I had a visit from Germany here, and I had problem with my car. I had a Rambler, and it was not running very well. It was coughing, you know, and my German friend said, you know, there is something wrong with your car. I know that, you know, and open the hood. I opened the hood, and he said, my God, I have never seen such a big engine. You are a Volkswagen mechanic. Yeah, it is a little, little. What is that? What is that? You know, and I said, you know, oh, it is so big. I have never seen such a big monster. How many miles per gallon do you get? Well, nobody cares here. You know, and you know, why do you carry all this huge 8-cylinder? You know, Volkswagen, I know that, you know, it's only 4 cylinders. Or they are, Swedes are making 3 cylinders or 2 cylinders car. We cannot afford it in Europe. So he went step by step, and he fixed my engine in Rambler, so it was giving better mileage. He adjusted the mixture. He never saw it before. You see how he approached it? From the functional relationship of modern engine, if it is 2-cylinder, 3-cylinder, 16-cylinder car. He knew the principles. He never saw what was underneath of my hood. And all of a sudden, you know, it was running, and I was thinking about it. I said, my God, you can do that. Where it is coming from? He was educated mechanic. He was not trained mechanic. You see that this is the difference. Another aspect, practical aspect, you know, of education. When I came to the United States in 1957, it was a year of Sputnik. I moved from East Coast to West Coast. I had a scholarship at the university, Lincoln University, but I felt I cannot learn anything there. I was being used to teach, to help to teach German, Russian, philosophy, literature. The instructors, I was there as a student. I felt it leads nowhere. I will return the scholarship for 1 year. President told me, if you stay, we give you, you need American pedigree. You don't have any degree. You have gymnasium. Nobody knows what gymnasium is. Gymnasium is, you know, this is what you have. So we give you American pedigree. In 1 year, you will get your bachelor degree. In 1 year, another year, master's degree. But I felt I am not learning anything. It was Lincoln University which was established according to last will of President Lincoln, which was supposed to be black Harvard in Pennsylvania. So I quit after 2 months and said goodbye. This is not a place for me. And I went to San Francisco and wanted to see America, and I was looking for a job and did everything possible, you know, waiter, as you do, young man, gardener, everything, you know, in order to make some money. And from Europe, you don't have any degree between gymnasium and doctorate. So I was almost finished in philosophy in Austria, but in between I had nothing. A lot of experience. There was a position at Bechtel Engineering. I applied for it, and I lied about my background. And I was able to do what they asked me to do, to make design, you know. So I would get a job in chemical engineering and they were just about to get a big contract in Persia to build the largest refinery in the world. They were building refineries, the largest American engineering firm. They learned that I speak few languages, and they thought, they believed I was an engineer. One day in September, we were told that we will experience Russian Sputnik. This was first day when Sputnik traveled around the Earth. There were about 2,000 engineers at Bechtel. During the lunch hour, we went in downtown San Francisco and watched a little dot. Little dot was moving across the sky every hour. And my colleagues were looking at it and said, that's not Russian. There are German minds behind it. Germans made it. You know, we have underestimated Russians. And so they were satisfied that it is not Russian Sputnik. It is German engineering. They got able German engineers, and they made it for Russians. And they make big propaganda. So every hour, the dot was traveling, you know. And after the lunch hour, we went back to our work. And I could not help, and I started telling them that this underestimation of Russians is very dangerous. The Russians produce amazing things, you know, in mathematics, in engineering, in science. And my colleagues never heard anything like this. They thought that the Russians were just fakes. But, you know, the more I talk about it, the director came and said to me, you know, where are you pulling all of these things? Where did you study engineering? I said, no, I have never studied engineering. So how come you are talking about it? You know, I am aware of what my doctoral thesis is about Russia and Europe. The cultural relationship of these two countries and way of thinking how Russia was borrowing everything from Western Europe. You didn't tell us that. You know, I was able to do the job. He brought me to the boss, you know, and the boss was quite a smart man. These were people who later appeared as close collaborators of President Reagan. One of them was foreign minister, you know the name Schultz. The other one was Caspar Weinberger. These were top people who later became closely affiliated with President Reagan. And they were also preparing new strategy for Bechtel in Persia. In Persia, we had to remove Mossadegh. President Mossadegh was a man who nationalized oil industry with the help of British and American intelligence. We have removed the first democratic leader of Persia. After that, we were able to move in with our oil interest and build the first largest refinery in the world. I got a job only because of this. I was working on this refinery in Persia, and I was offered a job to go there. And I felt strangely about it, you know, but this was the reality. I did not stay long enough because I had to go back to Europe and finish my PhD. And when I came back, they employed me again, and they offered me a job here in Alaska when I was already a job where I was able to make 5 times as much as assistant professor. But I stayed. I'm still here. You know, my background helped me. I did not brag about it. I just tried to swim through and sell what I could sell. I did, but when I was confronted by the bosses, then they wanted to use me. With the knowledge of languages, you know, we could use you in Persia. You know, there are Russians everywhere. There are Germans everywhere, and French. My French was quite good too. And so there was nobody around among the engineers, you know, who knew any foreign language. But it was not my bag, you know, and I wanted to go back, finish, and come back to the United States. And then with philosophy, people were laughing, you know, when I said I want to teach philosophy. Our president, Patty, was laughing his head off when he said, "We never had it, we don't have it, we will never have it, forget it." And if you can do something what makes sense, you know. and so this was the experience, you know, between 2 continents when you cannot change the basic nature, you know, of these 2 continents. British are in between. Modern era creating new challenges which were continuation of Renaissance, of few brave men who challenged the view about the nature of the universe. And it continued since 15th century, 16th century, until 20th century. It is a revolution of human mind. You change your mind and you change the world. This is what happened. The revelation comes from the creativity. Human creativity creates something which has to be verified, at least temporarily verified, but establishes new vistas from which you see the world. To teach our young generation this very approach is, in my view, the most important thing. To tap into their curiosity, to help them to develop their own curiosity and follow it. I think as long as we can accomplish that, you know, we can preserve ourselves. Romans were never able to do it. They collapsed. But Greeks could not do it either. They were fighting their eternal fights between Sparta and Athens, you know, until they were defeated in 2nd century BC by Romans. Romans destroyed city of Corinth, killing all men, all Greeks who defended this city. This is the true Roman way, just like they did to Carthage, to Etruscans. When they moved finally to Athens, one of their leaders, Cato, said, "Defeated Greece, defeated victorious Rome," culturally. So Greece was defeated, but it survived. It survived in tradition of the Western world. All of these inventions of Greek minds have to be preserved by thinking people of the West. It is this which was then also given to the East, Japanese, Chinese. They had their own marvelous tradition, independent of the West. But during the last 200 years, it is the impact of the Western thought, Western science, Western philosophy, which changed the East. Modern China is modern by accepting Western philosophies. And Western philosophies changed not only China, but Japan as well. Japan and China try to synthesize their tradition with Western tradition. It was Marxism which was brought to China. Mao became Marxist leader of traditional China. In Japan, their samurais were inspired by Western way of thinking, by Western philosophies. They became Westerners. So there is a very interesting fight within all of these nations. History of Russia, modern Russia, is history of two movements, Westerners and Slavophiles. Westerners are those who were infected by Western disease and try to distribute it in Russia against the Russian tradition. The same was happening in China, in Japan as well. So Western influence, Western educational system splits traditions of East and West. Russia could never be understood if you don't understand the fight of these two movements. Westerners, Russian Westerners. Peter the Great was the first great Westerner. He went to Holland to learn it, how to build ships, how to mix the powder, you know, how to dance with tall Dutch girls. They thought that he was one of them, you know, and he was probably the tallest man in Europe at that time. He would be probably ideal member of the NBA. He brought it back to Russia and changed Russia. This is the beginning. Each generation since beginning of 18th century continues changing Russia according to Western idea. They are borrowing. They borrowed ballet and made great thing out of it. They borrowed science, mathematics, and they excelled in it. They became the greatest nation of chess players. You know, chess players are not gamers. You need for this something up. If you have 90% of population playing chess, it tells you something. And so whatever they borrowed, they made something out of it. But the same Japanese, the same Chinese, and all other non-Western nations. So we had a tremendous influence with our tradition, and among these traditions, it is not Western militarism, it is Western culture, science, and philosophy. This is what we are giving to the world, a new creativity in all of these fields. Creativity in science, in philosophy. Where is it coming from? We don't know. We are creative. Einstein, when he was one day told there was a movement of phenomenology, which was a philosophical school, powerful school on the continent. And the leader was Edmund Husserl. Phenomenology tries to explain human creativity. And when Einstein learned about it, he said, you know, I was always phenomenal. This is how you call it? This is how I create. It is a method that you don't go to sources. You try to eliminate from your mind all sources. You have a problem as a physicist, as a botanist, or you have a problem you want to solve. You don't go to sources. You eliminate from your mind everything what could disturb your way of thinking. You isolate the problem, you define the problem for yourself as you see it. No authority you will take. No Newton, no Einstein. There is a problem as you see it, as you define it, and you want to solve it. It makes you tired. And you say, I cannot do anything with it. If I cannot borrow, if I cannot go and take a book, you know, and or that authority, if I cannot, what can I have? Nothing to do. So he calls it method of bracketing of your mind. You bracket your mind that nothing influences your mind, and you have only the problem. When I was teaching it, you know, students loved it. And when we had final paper about phenomenology, they came with a blank page of paper. And they came to me and said, nothing happened. You cannot force it. You know, they were honest, but you know, students, they loved it. You know, and there were so many coming with a piece of. Nothing happened. So really nothing happened. So I had to accept this is the method, you know, of phenomenon. Nothing has to method. It is not a method from like Heathkit, you know, take number 1, number 2, glue it together, 1999, plug it in, and it plays. There are no methods, you know. We believe in methods. This is part of our American reality. Our teachers believe in method. You don't have to know anything about mathematics, but we have a booklet which prepares you, you know, how to teach algebra. You never can solve anything, but first lesson, second lesson, third lesson. And we have method how to jump the rope. You know, stretch the rope, you know, and the method explains you how to do it. You see the belief in method. This is at the beginning of 20th century. We had great people who gave us concept of method to follow. 1, 2, 3, plug it in, fine, please.
Isn't this phenomenology?
Phenomenology and phenomenal. Yeah, you break your tongue on it, but you can look. The man is Edmund Husserl. He was born about 50 miles from the place where I was born, about 100 years before me. And he was a brilliant man.
That sounds like an Eastern type of thinking, where it's not linear,
Yeah,
but more in a curve.
exactly.
You have all the shades going
yeah.
on.
This is exactly,
So we are getting it, especially in physics, I think.
yes, in everything.
And mathematics.
This is a closest attempt to explain creativity. Einstein said, yes, I could not pronounce it, phenomenology. This is how I work. I'm glad, you know, that somebody else. But I'm confused. I'm confused most of the time. You know?
But it seems like it's penetrating the
Yes,
Western
yeah, yeah.
culture.
And
you have the
it is
spread of meditation.
meditation,
you have the
Buddhism,
spread of yoga,
yes, the whole Oriental
and
approach.
it's coming in our art
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all up and
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
So there is this fusion perhaps
Yeah.
going on right now.
Yeah. So this is, in my view, the closest attempt which does not produce results. You know, you can apply this method, you can clean your mind, completely clean, bracket, he calls it bracket. And now you see nothing. Nothing comes. You are waiting for an inspiration. This is what my students were waiting for, an inspiration, you know. Nothing happened at the end of the class. So they gave me, how could I grade them? Can you imagine? How can I grade them that nothing happened?
Isn't this the approach now of studying things like time and what the significance of time is? And also trying to define dimensions, like we live in 3-dimension. What about the 4th and the 5th and the
Yeah.
6th and so forth? So we're broadening the concepts of
Yeah.
what is around us by bringing in a Eastern kind of way of thinking.
Yeah.
Is this going on?
Yes, but you know, we have it within our Western tradition, because Eastern tradition is for most of us foreign. And we can emphasize meditation, but Western mind cannot meditate the way, you know. We don't have the conditions for it. We meditate, you know, until 12, and there is a time for lunch, you know. Oh, I need a break, you know, I take a smoke, you know, and you interrupt your meditation, you know, with smoke or with something else, you know, you have to have, you are all shaky. You are waiting, you know, for a light to come, you know, like the famous physicist, you know, who was laying in the bathtub, you know, Archimedes, you know, the eureka. You are waiting for a eureka. And my students never got it. And you are lucky when you have eureka, one great eureka. It is said that Einstein had 1.5. One was theory of relativity, and the half was the unified field theory. It was only half, you know, and he was a lucky man. So if you get one in your lifetime, you will be very lucky. Most of us don't get not even a half. Or when we have, we don't recognize it. And please.
Well, something puzzles me. I really like your thought about it. We're surrounded by non-Western knowledge systems. Sometimes they're referred to as traditional ecological knowledge. One thing that perplexes almost all of the people who live in small communities around Alaska about us, Western thinkers, when did we take man out of nature? They consider that you don't separate human beings from nature. Where does that tradition come from in our thinking? Is it just compartmentalization?
Yes. Classical tradition of our Western science was objective. objective, you know. You have to preserve your objectivism, you know. Don't pollute it with your mind. Never mind, you know. Yeah. So you do the science, empirical science, you know, without mind. This is classical view. You know, how we explain Darwin. Darwin went on a trip, you know, in the boat named Eagle, and he went with all 5 senses, you know, like 5 apparatuses, you know. He went and collected, and then he fused it together, and this is theory of evolution. You know how he had it in his mind before he left England. Yeah. And he only confirmed what he had in his mind. But classical teaching of science was objective. Don't introduce any subjectivity into it. This science and education was destroyed in quantum physics. Niels Bohr and a group in Copenhagen of classical physics. Classical physics can be best formulated by Isaac Newton when he says, hypothesis non fingo. I do not pretend to give you a hypothesis. This is hot stuff of this universe. Don't fool around. Listen, this is what reality is all about. He was mistaken. This is classical picture of science. Quantum physics fuses just like Hume helped to fuse reason and senses together. Modern science of quantum physics and theory of relativity fuses mind and determines what the mind sees and how it works the data together. Men who contributed tremendously to it and whose seminar I have attended, Werner Heisenberg. He gave us principle of uncertainty. All through the history, man has been striving for certainty. This is what is still the most important aspect, certain. He gave us principle of uncertainty. Learn to live with uncertainty. This is what life is all about. So you see, the classical pictures we have elaborated in our mind has been radically amended.
People are afraid of uncertainty. People are afraid of uncertainty.
Yes, exactly.
That's why their churches are filled.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Could you discuss what is evil? Is that a conception? People who kill each other and wars. Why are we into each other? Evil is human concept. Yeah, I don't see, you know, reality of evil. Evil is man-made, man-invented. Theories of evil are invented by man. They are realities of evil, but described by man and done by man. You know, we can variously describe, you know, you can have religious affiliation, you have non-religious affiliation. You kind of humanly sense what evil is. If somebody comes and kills your child without any reason, I think you feel that's evil. But that's a word which you use for some experience which is internal. Our words are only proxies for something what words are not. So evil is a natural human perception of something bad. Is that a part of human nature? Is being uncivil
Yes.
part of human nature?
Yes, we have various words. Lack of civility, what you see in a society, lack of civility. We describe it by words, but you feel it that there is something rotten, you know, and you reject it. And
And you can use your language to describe it, you know. So from our religions, we have concept of goodness and evil. And these are concepts. And we operate with concepts and labels for the concepts.
But why do we do those bad things to each other? Regardless of what we
you know,
call it, why do we do it?
You know, I don't know. I don't know. I think it must be painful when you do it to somebody, you know, evil or
We
anything.
need to find it as being good.
Yeah.
That's all.
But, you know, we know that people commit evil, believing that this is the right thing to do. This is going in today's world, you know. Yeah. You know, there are so many things we would need, you know, another month, you know, just to lock the door, you know, and stay here, you know, with enough coffee and cookies, you know, before we close. And I have made a copy. I wanted to give to each of you, but I have forgotten it at home. And I have only one copy, which I will try to read very fast. It is a letter I write to Governor Parnell and Chair of Board of Regents of University of Alaska. And if you agree with it, you can sign it. And I write here, after 15 years of retirement from University of Alaska, I decided to offer a second series of lectures at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. I was prompted to offer this last shot from the old pistol after years of deep concern for the university. I spent 37 years of my life trying to contribute ad summum, measured by the highest educational standards of our cultural tradition. I have, however, observed an accelerated process of building a corporate system of top-heavy, self-serving administration, divorced from the service of educating our young generation for the real encounter in the World Series. As a nation, we should never accept our poor world ranking in math and science, a ranking that belongs educationally to that of a third world country. Aside from the national problems we face, our major concern has to be with our state of Alaska, whose oil income is quickly eroding. As a result, we are facing rapidly expanding deficits that will impact every segment of Alaskan life. The maintenance of UAF corporate system will be unsustainable and will have to be replaced with a simpler, all-around educational providing system of highly qualified professors and researchers. This new system of higher education can be accomplished only hand in hand with changes in primary and secondary educational standards. Among many contemporary world educators, it is well known that the leaders we should listen to are in our geographical latitude: Finland and the Scandinavian countries. If Finland can rank #1 in math, science, and general education, they must be doing something right. And they do it for a disproportionate expenditure compared to our system. So here is my plea to you, Governor Parnell, Mr. Cavell, and members of Board of Regents. Please request the Finnish Academy of Science to dispatch one of their educational experts to come for 1 year to serve as a joint advisor to the governor of Alaska and University of Alaska Board of Regents for a payment of 1 year of her Finnish salary plus transportation first class from Helsinki to Alaska and back. Free housing can be provided by the Geophysical Institute, or if not available, I would offer housing free of charge and include a car for transportation. My memo to you is supported by long-time seniors of the state of Alaska attending my lecture series, The Idea of the University. Thank you. So if you want to rebel with me, you can sign it, you know. And I am going to deliver it to governor and to Board of Regents. Expecting an answer, and I don't want to disseminate it before. You know, they should address themselves to it. And I thank you very much, you know, for your patience and contribution, you know, because we had very good discussions, and I think it helped both of us. And I thank you very much. You know, if I have energy enough, I'm preparing the last shot from the old pistol, and about revolutions of human mind, and which I would rather call them, as I wanted to, number 10, because number 10 is so you know, magical number, like 10 Commandments, but I will try to have it like 13, you know, and things which happened in history of human mind and which changed the world. It changed our mind, thus changing the man, specifically focusing on these great events. So if I have enough energy, you know, in the fall, I would like to close before I say goodbye. So thank you very much. I will be waiting, you know, for the petition. Don't feel that you are forced to